I call it Skin of Awful, and to be honest, in this watch, it wasn't nearly as bad as I remember, but it's still really terrible. But it's not nearly as bad. There is one part of it that is just mind-boggling bad. So we'll get into that in just a second. But here we are, episode 23, Skin of Evil, stardate 41601.3. While traveling back from a conference, Counselor Troy's shuttle crash lands on a seemingly empty planet. Yet this planet, Vagra 2, is home to one of the most vile, most terrible, most evil beings in the universe, Armis. So, genre, I didn't even know when I was trying to classify this type of episode. It's a thriller, kind of. It's dramatic, kind of. It's got action, kind of. So I'm going to call it thriller, drama, action. I really don't know. This episode, I really am curious what you know about the behind the scenes because it feels all sorts of cobbled together. And the tropes, I actually thought about the tropes too and scratched my head. And I'm going to go with distress signal. And I'm going to go with big, bad, evil guy. Also there's like a fond farewell trope too. Funeral for a colleague trope kind of thing going on for a cast member. I mean, not a colleague. That'd be really sad. But, there's a lot of kind of things here and there. But really, this is about Armis versus the Enterprise crew. So I'm going to go with the big, bad, evil guy and the distress signal. So tell us a little bit, what's going on behind the scenes with this one? How did this come to be?
So the original title of this episode was originally called The Shroud. Riker was supposed to have a residual stain on his face after being absorbed by Armis, showing, quote, the sign of the shroud.
Ugh.
Yeah. So fortunately, that didn't happen. For the broader scope of things, Crosby wanted out of her TNG contract, and longtime listeners of the show might remember that we called this back with the episode Haven, where Yar literally has one line, because up until that point, she is the best developed character out of all of them. You got episodes like Code of Honor, for better or worse. That's Yar focused, Yar centric. And to a certain degree, The Naked Now, and all these episodes that build her up and develop her, then she kind of stalls and gets put in a holding pattern. Crosby wanted out of her contract, so she discussed with Roddenberry what the best way would be to write her out of the show. And Roddenberry decided to kill Tasha Yar off. He said it would be more dramatic and more final to do that than to have a transfer or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what happened there. But then Gene Roddenberry's lawyer, Leonard Majlish, he got involved.
This guy again. Haven't heard of him in a minute,
Yeah, we haven't. So in case you need a refresher on who this gentleman is, Leonard Majlish was Gene Roddenberry's personal lawyer. He went in and basically negotiated with Paramount to get a massive compensation package for Star Trek The Next Generation even to be made. He was also accused of systematically going through and micromanaging the writers and giving the writers notes he claimed were from Gene Roddenberry, but were really from him. Yeah, and Majlish was later banned from the Paramount lot after the after the writers of the show filed a grievance with the Writers Guild of America. This is right before the strike happened, by the way.
Let's go, Writers Guild. Ban that fool. Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of people who are in the know on this episode say that the way in which Yar died was Majlish's idea. So they blame Majlish
for his non-idea.
There you go. Good call there. So a couple other bits of trivia here. Armis's pit was Metamucil and Printer's ink.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah.
Poor Jonathan Frakes having to sign that.
That's the deal there. Frakes actually was absorbed by the pit and ejected. After that scene was shot, LeVar Burton joked about it and said, Frakes, I would never do that again, or I'd never do that, period. And then when the funeral scene was filmed, the main cast entered the set with black armbands on, and Crosby wore a shroud. So that's what I got there. With all that in mind, I give this to you, Scholar Beta. What is good, if anything, about Skin of Evil?
Well, there's some, sheddings of interesting ideas here. See what I did there? Okay, first thing that's kind of cool about this episode, like I said, kind of, how Armis got on, what did I say this planet was called? Vega 2? Varga 2 or something like that? Yeah.
target too.
How Armis got there is pretty freaking cool. Okay, so basically, if we're taking what Armis says literally, or what Armis and Troy kind of work out together, they're this race of titans. I'm not sure if they're literally titans, like Greek mythology, like exists in the original series, or a different type of titan, whatever it is. These people somehow purified themselves, and they became so pure that they are literally able to shed their evil, spite, and malice and leave it behind in a pool of Metamucil and printer's ink, and then move on with their journey. And I think that's actually kind of cool. That's seemingly very interesting. Do you remember that episode Transfigurations, where that dude turns into an orange? He wears the blue suit and turns into a bright orange guy. It's kind of like, what does he leave behind when he metamorphs into a really super cool being? Maybe something evil and terrible. And I think that idea is interesting. Second thing that I think is kind of cool, I honestly think Troy really rules in this episode. I think Marina Sirtis' acting works pretty well in that that crash shuttlecraft. She's bringing fear, claustrophobia, sadness. She tussles with Armis, kind of unafraid, and she's all business. At one point, she tells Picard that the creature needs to be destroyed because he's, sadism and cruelty with no redeeming qualities. I love that. Actually, maybe Data says that. Now I can't interpret my notes. I'm not sure who says that, but I love that description of Armis. Here's a little mini debate I want to have with you right here on the spot.
Okay.
So Guinan says much later in the episode that's a billion times better than this, Yesterday's Enterprise. She says that Tasha's death was senseless, meaningless. It's without purpose. So I want to talk to you. Do you think it's without purpose? Because the way I read it, she died trying to rescue Troy, right? So she, the Enterprise, had no way of understanding the power of Armis. She was sent there. She's the security chief. Her job is to rescue Troy. She goes and does that. She's killed while doing that. Now, I know Armis kind of senselessly kills her, and he kind of talks about how it's without meaning, or he didn't care. He just wanted to do it. But does that make her death necessarily senseless? I don't know. What do you think, my friend?
Actually, I kind of think it does, and I agree with Guinan on this because they basically give Yard the red shirt treatment.
So that type of senseless, not in like the reason she dies, but because she dies like a red shirt?
Right, that's the impression that I get, and I kind of agree with a lot of critics on this episode for that. They basically give her the red shirt treatment. In my mind, this is no different than that episode Friday's Child in the original series where a red shirt is with Captain Kirk, and then they visit the indigenous people on the planet. Then a Klingon shows up, and the red shirt goes, "Captain, a Klingon," and then one of the indigenous people throw a spear, and it hits the red shirt in the chest. I love how deeply you read into this, and my opinion is slowly changing now that I give it a second look and a third look and a 50th look. In terms of consistent with her character, that does have some meaning there. I mean, it could have been worse. You could have been blown up in a space battle. That would have been even more meaningless. But from my perspective...
Can I just say one more thing about that, though, my friend? I just also think, so red shirts, they die. The reason why red shirt deaths, in my opinion, aren't meaningful is because you don't know who they are. This is just rando person number 635 and never seen before and is now dead, so I don't care. But, I don't think the suddenness of death necessarily makes it any more meaningful. I'm thinking about my old show that used to be good until it became awful, Game of Thrones. And, they suddenly killed off a bunch of people. The TV show even more so than the book. I think sudden can be really dramatic and keep you on your toes. Now, this is kind of more of living in the rules of a sitcom where people don't suddenly die. This show, the serialized show. So, I understand that. So I understand why, just watching it kind of makes you seem and look more like a red shirt. But, the more I watch it and the more I think about what Guinan's saying, I still love Yesterday's Enterprise and I love Guinan, but I don't know if purposeless meaninglessness is exactly how I would describe it. So with that in mind, what do I go to? Did I talk about, I talked about some of the good. We had a little back and forth on that. Should I get into what's terrible about this?
I have a real quick
You want to say one more thing? Yeah. What do you got?
Question. There's a fan theory out there that Armis is really a changeling. Given that you're a Deep Space Nine aficionado, so the Titans that he's describing are not the founders.
Okay, do you remember that episode of the original series where they meet, what Greek god did they meet? Mercury?
Apollo.
Apollo?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm just
All
saying.
right.
To me, literally believe Titan from the Universal Translator is more accurate than Founder. But that's just my opinion. Just my
Okay.
opinion.
I was curious what your thoughts were on that, given your affinity for Deep Space Nine, and I think it holds merit. But your perspective on Apollo and who mourns Adonis, I think,
Yes.
that has a connection there too. So lay it on me, Scholar Beta. What's bad about this episode?
Oh my gosh. The look of Armis. What in the world am I looking at? What? This is the best you could do. You're going to make a big bad guy, an evil dude who's going to kill one of your main cast, and you're going to make it look like a dude in a trash bag covered in oil. What in the heck are you thinking? There are so many. I actually kind of went through and clicked through my notes to look at all the screen caps I took, and there are so many interesting aliens that come up in season 1. That are way cooler and more menacing and interesting. Even the electricity from Lonely Among Us, to me, is more interesting and menacing than sludge pit, oiled cover, Metamucil printer ink Armis. I just think the look of Armis is so disgusting and so awful and so weak. You know, when like he's rising slowly, they do it like 4 times because they don't have anything to do in this episode. So they have to reuse the same shot over and over again. And you get those reaction shots from the Enterprise crew, the away team. And this, like, there's no emotion. Like, they don't even know what they're looking at. What am I looking at? Am I looking at a man in a trash bag? What am I looking at here? It just is so bad. Armis looked worse than I remember him. I'm not watching this on Blu-ray or anything like that either. I'm watching this in 480p DVD, and it just looks terrible, and I can't even imagine how bad it would look in Blu-ray. I didn't even go look it up on TrekWork. That's how disturbed I was by this. Am I supposed to be afraid of this creature? I mean, it killed Yar, so that's kind of intimidating, but am I really supposed to be afraid of this piece of whatever this is? I don't know, man. I just think it is so lazy. I was trying to think, what is lazier than Armis? And I got nothing. I couldn't come up with a single alien that I think is even lazier than this. You know, even like some random humanoid with a random little ridge on their forehead is more interesting than Armis. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I just think it's hideously lazy and bad. Yeah, what do you think? You got one that's worse? I'm up for this. What do you got?
The Baku from Star Trek Insurrection.
Oh, the Baku are pretty gross. You're right about that. The stretchy skin guys? Or no, the humanoids. The humanoids.
The humanoids. They didn't even try there. They did not even try. And you could have tried to make them more attractive, but you didn't even try there. So that, in terms of laziness, I would say the Baku.
Just for the sake of my time, I'm going to agree to disagree with you on that, because at least the Baku aren't like, they didn't try to go for something alien. Anyways, but you're right about that. That's some lazy nonsense right there. You definitely got number 2 or number 3 in my book for sure. Okay, last thing that I think doesn't work about this, and I'm curious I'll give you the pips and I'll kick it over to you. So I'm on the fence about the funeral scene. You know, the funeral. Okay, on the one hand, I'll give it some points. It does. You know, it's kind of touching. I like Tasha Yar's words about Picard, heart of an explorer, soul of a poet. That's kind of what I strive for in life. You know, I like that description a lot. I think that's really apropos. But on the other side, you know, you can't, if you're a Star Trek person, you think a lot about technology in this world. You know, obviously you do, obviously I do. So so many questions come up when I see this. I'm like, when does Jean-Luc have a holographic will? Does he update it regularly? Does Riker? Does Troy? Does Beverly? When would you do that? Do you do it once a year, once a month, once a week? You know, what if it was awkward and out of date? You know, what if it was awkward and really revealing and talked about your one-night stand with Data and you really didn't want anyone to know about that, but Jean-Luc Picard just downloaded off of your personal log and put it out there for everyone to see. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just more questions than answers there. So really what ticks me off about this episode, really just the gross, disgusting look of Armis and the kind of the strange questions that come up with the funeral. Well, honestly, that's really the only thing that bothers me about it. And so for that, I'm going to give this thing an ensign. I'm giving it 1 pip. You know, it is Armis is offensively bad, but honestly, besides that, I don't think it doesn't fall below the rank of ensign for me. What about you, my friend? What are you hitting this with?
So here is my deal. I applaud your generosity here because I don't have a lot for it right here in this episode. I'm giving it a chief. I'm giving it half a pip.
Nice.
Chief Petty
Knock it
Officer
down.
there. So there are a couple things here that work. There are 3 things that work for me. There is a spectacular scene with Yar and Worf at the beginning. I've always wondered what a relationship between these two would look like, and this is the closest thing we'll ever see of it. Everybody talks about Yar's relationship with Data. I think that was forced. I think that the entire reason that storyline existed in Naked Now is to demonstrate that Data has a hard drive. But
whoa, good one.
Yeah, there you go. But
a thumbstick. Oh, sorry, that might be a little explicit. Sorry, audience. We're moving on. Moving on.
But in terms of personality, in terms of how these 2 characters would complement each other, Worf and Yar would work a lot better as a pairing instead of Yar and Data. They talk for less than a minute about martial arts, and it's great. Good close up on Worf after hearing that Yar was killed. Pretty good deal there. The scenes where you like Troy and Armis, I like Picard and Armis in this episode. I think the scenes in which he confronts Armis are pretty good. And I like the funeral scene. With me, it's consistent with Yar's character that she would write something like this, given her position. And she says at the beginning of the episode, or rather the beginning of the video, that if you're watching this, I'm dead. And considering her rough upbringing, her understanding of the fragility of life, I'm okay with it. I definitely hear you on the logistics of maintaining something like that and the discretion with which a commanding officer like Picard would do. I don't think it's standard procedure. And to the best of my knowledge, we don't see anything like this again. Data certainly didn't do something like this in Nemesis, or we don't see anything like that again. So I bought the funeral scene because it's consistent with Yar's character, especially considering she's grown with her empathy and love, which she attributes to Troy. Her send-off for family and the fact that she does not have family, and how the Enterprise became her family. In Hawaiian culture, there's something called Hanai Ohana, where they're not your actual family, but because of common interest, you adopt them as if they were your family. And I bought that. And they talk about really insightful characterization. Riker encouraging Yar. I already talked about Troy's empathy, love, and instilling Yar with a sense of femininity. Worf's warrior spirit, Crusher's determination, Wesley's kindness, Geordi's optimism. All of this is spot on. I do like that. There are literally 3 things from my perspective that's good about Skin of Evil, and there they are. What are your thoughts on that, Sculler Beta?
You know, I too like the martial arts tournament talk. I was going to break that up. I'm glad you did. And yeah, the tease of a relationship potentially, or some feelings between these 2. I noted that, but then I thought, wow, it's kind of a strange time to bring that up on your death episode. Yep. You know, like that's weird. So it was kind of neutral for me. On the one hand, it's interesting, something to think about. On the other hand, it's kind of just brought up and then you're dead. Okay, yep. On the adopted crew member, I'm with you there too. Yeah, I definitely think so. But I see that she's kind of adopted this family. So you're thinking this is something that maybe just Yar has done. Picard maybe hasn't created this will. Okay, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah, that Worf kind of feels that sense of adoption as well. There's a couple characters that are actually going to go through that. In fact, maybe they developed that with Worf because they already had some of these ideas for Yar, and they just could recycle them through his character too, you know? So anyways, I like your ideas there.
Because we never see it again.
Very cool, my friend.
Thank you. We never see it again. We don't see any other character. Nope. To my knowledge, Jadzia doesn't do anything like this in DS9. So
though they do definitely have episodes about her death and, you know, them having to go on like a Klingon road trip in order to celebrate her death. I remember that one. That's pretty good. Too.
I'm not that far into DS9 yet. I've been putting it off for several years. So real quick, here is what doesn't work for me. And you already touched on some of these. There's another chief engineer, Lynch. Okay, right. Consistency. What's that? There are too many needless contrivances. The Enterprise engines are shut down at the beginning. No payoff. They throw caution to the wind and start up without testing the core. To show urgency, I guess, but there's no real payoff there. They can't beam up the wreck because the episode has to happen. Data can tell what it's not, but not what it is, what Armis is. Insufficient information. Yeah. A lot of contrivance there. It's just to kill Yar. Yes, sir.
You know, there's a lot of that going on in Symbiosis too. Remember the whole like the star is all crazy and it's causing interference and static and then goes nowhere. Similar idea. Yeah, we have this kind of contrived setup just to get to the episode. You know.
Yep. And Star Trek is famous for that, and that's definitely something that docks it for pips, unless there's a good reason for it. The Armis character, bad visual effects, as you pointed out, also really bad voice acting, especially the bad villain at the end. I write here, it sounds like a playground bully instead of a sinister killer. This guy sounds like he's going to take your milk money instead of, you know, more of a Hannibal Lecter type, the cool, calculating, killing people, but getting nothing from it, sociopathic stuff. Also, I attribute it to a Power Ranger villain. The way it sounds, the way it looks, definitely a Power Ranger villain.
But that's insulting to Power Rangers, to be honest, my friend.
Okay. I'm willing to dunk on
I just like to point out they had real costumes. Those aliens had real costumes. This is a nothing. But keep going.
So with that in mind, Armis does the terribly written bad guy's cardinal sin of letting Picard talk to Troy to figure out how to beat Armis. Cardinal sin, no excuse for that. Just has to happen. So those are my deals. That's why this gets to be a chief. This doesn't even get a full officer's commission, half a pip, and we move on. With that in mind, are we ready for TrekWork, Scholar Beta?
I think so.
All right. So,
shall I read it?
Yeah.
Or you got it.
No, you lead off on this. Yours is better thought out than mine.
So here's what I'm asking, my friends. This week, give us some thoughts on how would you exit Tasha Yar from the show? And I said exit. You don't necessarily have to kill her. Would you go the Gene Roddenberry route and kill her? Would you go for something else, like a transfer or some space anomaly? Would you leave some room for her to come back? So I want you to write a brief synopsis on how Yar leaves TNG and add some production notes about possible future cameos. Throw those in the comments, tweet it at us. Special commendations for those who participate. We'll read your awesome answers and your handle at the beginning of our show. And really quickly, this is just kind of tongue-in-cheek because there are truly no Enterprise interiors in there. There's sick bay, there's the bridge. We've covered those ad nauseum. You know, I'm even picking out special chair locations now. So I'm going to go back to Type 7 shuttlecraft cargo section and cockpit damaged. So now we get to see what this Type 7 shuttlecraft looks like damaged. We got to see what it looked like while operational. A couple episodes back, now we're going to see it damaged. There's Troy back there in the cargo section. Things are all strewn about, and there's Picard up there when he beams over to hang out with Troy, committing, bad guy sin number 1. So there's a Type 7 shuttlecraft interior, a little more detail on it. Just happens to be damaged detail.
Awesome. Greetings, everyone. Captain Kanaka here. On behalf of all the educators at Teachers Talking Trek, I hope you enjoyed our little video here. As always, please let us know what you think in the comments. So with that said, live long and prosper, e malama pono, and see you next time.